Yay! What's going down, everybody? This is the commish here, kicking off the season right after the draft with our first podcast for 2016. But before that, I just want to thank each and every one of you for coming out last night. Also, David for hosting the event. It was really nice. Had a lot of pizza, a lot of good times, a lot of laughs, a lot of frustration. That's what fantasy football is all about. So I just want to thank each and every one of you guys also for being very, what's the word I'm looking for? Basically, just being cooperative with the draft date as well. I think everybody came in at the same time. There was no issues with the draft date, and people made it on time. So it was a great night. And everybody, good luck for the fantasy season. So, with the first podcast, we're going to recap the draft that recently happened, and also it did finish in record time. I remember we were in, I think it was like round 15, and I was like, it's not even 9 o'clock yet. I mean, wow. I don't think that's ever happened, guys. So, I mean, that's a first. So like last year when I recapped the draft, I wrote a whole article. Obviously, that's going to take a long time, so I just have a few notes for each team. What do I think about them? And here is how I'm going to be looking at each team. So, first, we're going to start off with my overall thoughts for each team. Obviously, this goes into play with what they did in the draft, how their team is constructed, and overall what to look for. The value picks, my favorite pick, the pick I hated the most, reaches, a late flyer upside pick, and last but not least, is this team secure enough, or if you want to look at it as, is it prepared for a worst case scenario? So those are the things I'm going to be breaking down with each team. So without further ado, let's get started. So kicking off first, we'll start in the draft order, and we'll start with yours truly. I had the number one pick, and my overall thoughts were I was set on zero RB, and what do you know? Zero RB was the hype with this particular team right here. It was probably, in my opinion, it was one of maybe three teams that went this strategy, and those three teams picked right next to each other. I want to start off by saying that I think it actually went pretty well. This is the first time ever I've done zero RB, switching over from a value or traditional type or best available as I've done in the past with a little bit of hype mixed in. But let's break it down. So those were my overall thoughts. I think that it's pretty obvious that it's zero RB and trying to get lucky and roll the dice with the RBs. Now, when I look at this team, basically what it is I'm viewing the running back situation as a flyer and flex. Now, the way this team is constructed is you have a lot of five wide receivers that went off in the first 5 rounds. Now, with that being said, you had a mixture of hype and upside. So, and I'm going to break that down a little bit. But yeah, I think the way I want this team particularly set out is with the running back position because that's the most important with this strategy is you need to hit on at least one of them. I think uh, you want a starter caliber running back to fill in that gets at least 10 points. And then you probably look for those PPR guys who get a nice floor in there because you have so much explosion with the wide receiver position. But the one thing that I was very shocked about is that with this particular setup, I was still able to get tight ends that I expect to finish within the top 10, and I got two of them because I liked both of them, and I thought that their value was really decent with that, with Gary Barnage and Antonio Gates. So the value pick, it's a tie between two guys, Doug Baldwin and the guy I just mentioned, Gary Barnage. So Baldwin, I received in the late fourth, or with my pick, you can view it as the first pick in the fifth round. The reason why I put him as a value pick is because I, for one, am very, 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 very high on Doug Baldwin this season. A lot of people are kind of skeptical because of he's been there for so long, and out of nowhere he has this explosion of a season. Well, I think that with him and Russell Wilson, I think they go together perfectly. When Russell Wilson is scrambling out of the pocket, Doug Baldwin is all over the middle of the field. He knows how to read Russell. I just think that he will become a wide receiver too. And having him as my last flex, I really, really, really like Doug Baldwin this season. Gary Barnage was another guy that I think people were down on, but then again, getting him in the 10th round, there is no, once you hit the double digit rounds, there is no risk whatsoever. And I actually believe that Gary Barnage can actually continue what he did last season. He still has that tight end job locked up. I also believe that, people think that with Robert Griffin that his value goes down, and I don't see that whatsoever. If he was catching touchdowns from Johnny Manziel, I think he's fine. Now, obviously, most of his production came with Josh McCown, but there is nothing to worry about with Gary Barnage. If you've watched the preseason, and I'm not talking about the nice touchdown that he had, the way this offense is running with Robert Griffin is very similar to how they ran their offense in Washington. You got to watch out for his legs. You got to watch out for the deep bomb, and you got to watch out for the play fakes and read options. And that also opens up not only things for the running game, but it also opens up those quick slants and over the middle passes to Gary Barnage. I expect Gary Barnage to have a really good red zone season like he did a season ago. So I really, really like Gary Barnage. My favorite pick for this team is a guy I mentioned, Doug Baldwin, only because I've been very, very high on him. I did not expect him to fall to me. I'm probably one of the few people that is still high on Doug Baldwin this season. I know there's a lot of doubters out there, but for the way I constructed my team and getting him as my last flex, I'm all in on Doug Baldwin. Pick I hated, and it's nothing against this man at all. It's probably Melvin Gordon. I was looking for either Chris Ivory or Jonathan Stewart to be my number one in a zero RB, and then just take a whole bunch of flyer guys because I think that both of those guys warrant at least 8 points a week. And they are touchdown dependent, but with my receiving explosion backing them up, I decided to go Melvin Gordon. The only other starting back that I thought I could consider was Rashad Jennings. And I know Rashad Jennings, they're saying, oh, he's the guy now. But bottom line is Andre Williams did not get cut yet. So there's always the goal line opportunity that can get stolen with him. And the third down role, he does not have whatsoever. Now, Melvin Gordon, yes, there is more cons than there is pros to this guy. But the bottom line is San Diego came out and they said they want to have him featured. And Danny Woodhead, I like Danny Woodhead, but I think he did a little too much last season that he can't replicate again. So Melvin Gordon is the guy that I hate, but you never know. He still warrants a lot of upside, and that's what I looked for at that pick. There were two reach picks with this team, Marvin Jones and Bilal Powell. Now, picking all the way at the back end of the draft, if you really like somebody, you have to reach whether it's 2 or 3 rounds. So, starting off with Marvin Jones, now this was a guy that you had to warm up a little bit too, but I liked it because he's also stashed on my bench for now. I like the upside on the bench, but he's probably going to start for my team. I like his wide receiver one upside. He is the number one wide receiver in Detroit. And the reason why I like him is because the Anquan Boldin signing, I think, eats in a little to what Golden Tate does. Because Golden Tate works underneath, works those intermediate routes, and is a third down mover. That's what Anquan Boldin essentially was his whole career. So I had to bump down Golden Tate in my rankings. So Marvin Jones operating as the one, and he's looked really nice in the preseason. as well as getting these big throws from Matt Stafford. Because the reason why Calvin Johnson retired too was he just couldn't burn the field as much as he used to, and that's why Stafford is a guy like Jay Cutler. He looks to one guy and just chucks it. Marvin Jones is that guy. He could go over for 1,000 yards, and I also believe he's got a lot of touchdown upside. So I agree with that reach. Bilal Powell, I think a lot of people who don't watch the Jets. Now, me personally, obviously I'm a Jets fan. I'm not huge on Matt Forte for fantasy purposes. I think he's a great real life player. Bilal Powell is going to be locked up into the third down job. I love how they used him last season, especially when Chris Ivory was hurt. And Matt Forte has not been a productive goal line back in his career. There's a slight possibility that Bilal Powell can be a goal line back. Now, I know they said that they want Kyrie Robinson in there, but I don't know that much. I just know that Bilal Powell is going to have a role. He's probably going to be an amazing RB2 this season, and that's why I reached for the guy. As I alluded to earlier, you have to reach, and I knew back in the 8th round I wasn't going to get him. My late round flyer has to go to TJ Yeldon right here. The Jacksonville Jaguars are operating in a two-back system. Now, TJ Yeldon had a lot of hype before the Ivory signing back in New Year's. I remember we were at Lewis's house. TJ Yeldon was a guy that was supposed to be a third-round pick if they didn't bring in Chris Ivory, because he does it all, and he was one of the very few workhorse backs in the league. Chris Ivory's in it now. The way you can look this is great for the Jags as a team. I don't know for fantasy purposes, but the one thing you can't deny with Chris Ivory is he's a monster, he's a beast, but also he's just like a Ryan Matthews. Well, he runs so hard that he's going to miss some time. But I also think that TJ Yeldon has carved out a third down role, and now, the Jags probably might have a hot hand approach, but I think both Ivory and Yeldon see the field, and when a PPR format, I kind of like Yeldon a little bit, so that's my flyer with the upside there. We have to ask ourselves, is this team secure? The wide receivers, absolutely. Brown, Watkins, Hilton, Baldwin, and Marvin Jones, along with Steve Smith just laying on the bench just in case he comes back. I'd say that's secure. The RBs, you're just looking for upside at that point. There are 5 rostered on this team. And the way you want this team constructed is you want one potential guy that can start and a guy that's a third down back, just because you have so much good value with the wide receivers and the tight ends. So, am I buying this team or am I selling it? I am 100% buying this team, not to be biased, but it's how I constructed my team. I think that, there's a trade in place somewhere down the line that could make this team a little bit more balanced, but going the zero RB approach gives you a lot of trade bait, and that's what you wanted to see here. So I am fully buying this team. Moving on to our next team. Mr. Rob Coffey picked from the number 2 spot, and my overall thoughts here was the perfect mixture of value and hype. Now, there were a lot of things that I expected that were going to happen with this team, and pretty much they did happen. So I just think that, talking to him before the draft, zero RB was something that he was looking forward to. But something happened, and it was good that it did happen, because just in case zero RB doesn't work, this thing, I think, flat out just made the team amazing. So the value pick, this is what I'm talking about. Devonta Freeman. I think a lot of people are buying a little bit too much into the Tevin Coleman hype. I like Tevin Coleman. I think he's a decent back, but you can't ignore the fact of what Freeman did last season. And even when Coleman did split with him late in the season last year, Freeman still had the goal line work. Freeman is still going to be the third down back. He's just going to be a guy, I'm talking about Tevin Coleman here, that gives him a little bit of breathers. I think whoever was going to land Devonta Freeman, it was going to be a great pick in the second round, and he almost fell to the third. So this is an excellent pick. I have Freeman ranked inside my top 5 running backs. He's actually my number 4, I think, behind Le'Veon Bell after this suspension. So I love Devonta Freeman this season. That was a really, really, really awesome pick. And it actually set up his team to be a really well-balanced machine. My favorite pick, though, has to go to Tom Brady in the 9th round. There's going to be a lot of value in favorite picks that probably are quarterback related in this draft, but it's rightfully so. You have Tom Brady with the suspension, it doesn't matter because I think Tyrod Taylor is a valuable starter to fill in for him. And again, Brady is my favorite pick based on how he constructed his team with Tyrod Taylor because once that's gone, he's got a quarterback that finishes within the top five, a wide receiver that finishes within the top five, a running back that last season finished within the top five, wide receiver in Amari Cooper that's got some upside. There's just a lot of great things with this team. You can't deny that, and I think he covered his bases in each position that he had. Which brings me to the pick that I hated, and I'm thoroughly looking at this team, and I don't really hate anything. I could easily say Jacksonville's defense, but what the fuck does that do? The one thing that I do hate, if I had to pick, honestly, it would be Colby Fleener in the seventh round. Now, this is just a preference by me. There's nothing wrong with Colby Fleener, but I think again, where he's drafting, I think he really liked the upside, so he had to reach a bit. Me personally, I don't like looking at tight ends until round 9 to 10. That's usually my rule of thumb. And I think because, but it was the waiting game approach. You never know what can happen. But there were a lot of good tight end values left. But, Colby Fleener has upside to be a guy finishing, as I said, top five in his position. And he's covering his basis with that. So there's nothing really there. But like I said, there's nothing much to hate on this team at all. Pick that I think Rob reached on, I knew it was going to happen, was Tyler Lockett. Everybody was on the Tyler Lockett bandwagon last season after he exploded. Come in May, Tyler Lockett was projected to go in the seventh round, very similar to Marvin Jones. I think both these guys were supposed to be guys that were going to be taken in the seventh round, but you knew they were going to be reached on somehow. And Lockett was a guy I knew Rob was eyeing a lot. So do I agree with this reach? To a point, I do, because he has him as his last flex, and Tyler Lockett is not seen as a wide receiver 2 on anybody else's team. I love this reach. Tyler Lockett is going to be Seattle's secret weapon. And why do I say secret weapon? Well, if you watch the way Seattle runs, Tyler Lockett is not in on 2 wide receiver sets. He's still listed as the third behind Jermaine Kearse. Obviously, he's 10 times better than Jermaine Kearse will ever be or was in his career. But I think they're going to use Tyler Lockett in doses. But you never know when those doses can hit. Because if one catch for Tyler Lockett works out, it's 5 points. Tyler Lockett, I think I call him the secret weapon, almost like Percy Harvin, because when he touches the ball, something amazing happens. And the fact that he's still on punt returns, not kick returns, but you still have a little bit of return yard bonus with Tyler Lockett. He's primed for a really nice season. I don't know if he necessarily hits over 1,000, only because they're very careful with the way that they use him. But I think on a week-to-week basis, those numbers will come out very nicely. Late round flyer, there are 2 guys. Spencer Ware and Christine Michael, both guys, especially if you were going 0 RB, that you should have targeted. Especially Spencer Ware, I just think automatically he has a role. He's clearly a different type of running back than Jamal Charles, which is why I said on a podcast that Rob actually has recorded since, beginning of July. I like the value of Spencer Ware a lot. And the fact of the matter is he doesn't even have Jamal Charles, so if Jamal Charles does break another knee because he jukes out himself, Spencer Ware is an RB1, no question. And the same, actually I can't say that, but I think the other guy, Christine Michael, that I talked about, yeah, again, why do we have to keep hearing the hype about this guy? But if you've watched preseason, he's changed his running style. He's running very low. Christine Michael probably goes into the gym, probably just does shit ton of squats, because I don't know how he looks very uncomfortable, but he's using that to his advantage, because when a guy crouches underneath like that, you can't see him, so it's a lot harder. I think that, it's Rawls and Michael. I don't think any other Seattle back is worth owning. And I am big on Thomas Rawls if he is healthy, but Christine Michael can be a low end too if he gets the job. I can't flat out say RB1, but you're having a flyer ticket with this guy. Is this team safe? It's mixed perfectly. He's got a lot of good running backs that could be secure. Devonta Freeman not being handcuffed is a little risky, but I'm not even too worried about that, to be honest with you. I think that, if he was to go down, I still think he's got a lot of other value positions to help him out. such as Spencer Ware, Chris Thompson. Um, I think Freeman is the one guy that should have been cuffed, but it's not that huge of a deal because I think I liked a lot of his picks that he did here. Am I buying this team? 100%. I am buying this team without a question. And another late round flyer was Bruce Ellington, but I think the way to I'll touch on it just a tad bit. Bruce Ellington to me I think becomes the Theo Riddick of wide receivers, meaning he's always going to be 8 points, limited upside, but he's a floor guy that you're going to want to have on your team. Moving on to the next team, we're going to go to Andre, and the theory here was zero RB, but the safest zero RB that you could do. Andre's zero RB strategy is probably very similar to what it's a traditional zero RB, meaning that he went with the first three picks and then decided to go somewhere else. And it brings a lot of balance to the team. So zero RB with a team backfield is what he did. Now Johnny was one of the originators of the team backfield theory. Obviously Johnny loves to cuff everything, but for some reason that includes wide receivers. I don't understand why, but Johnny was probably one of the originators to go to the running backs on the same team, and I think Andre did a really good job with that one, getting the Titans backs. So starting off the value pick, Drew Brees. We're talking Drew Brees in the ninth round. Like, that's insane. I think Andre had Drew Brees last season, and I believe it was his fifth or sixth round pick. And he gets a discount with the ninth, and I actually believe Drew Brees has a better season than he did last year. And the one thing you can't deny about the Saints, they love to throw the ball. This is an excellent, excellent pick. Drew Brees was actually my number 2 ranked quarterback as well. Now, obviously, my rankings don't, necessarily mean that that's going to happen. Um, but yeah, I love that pick. My favorite pick, Derrick Henry. Andre was really smart on this one. He goes in and he drafts DeMarco Murray, which is another pick that I like. But not only do you get a secure backfield with the handcuff, Derrick Henry and DeMarco Murray, I just think you can start both of them on a week-to-week basis. And why do I say that? It has to do with their running style and the shit coaching. And what do I mean by shit coaching? Malarkey is a guy that even if the Titans are getting blown out, he's probably going to run the ball. They're probably still going to run the ball. And what do I mean by that? If the Titans are winning, it probably means that the running game was amazing, and that means DeMarco Murray had a big game. If the Titans are down by a lot and they're getting blown out by Jacksonville or Indianapolis within the division, who also have bad running games, the coach is probably going to say, Derrick Henry, get in there. We're down by a lot. Let's see what you can do here. DeMarco will give you a rest. We'll wait till next week. I think that both these backs on a good week, I think they can combine for 30 points. I just think, remember I said a good week. I'm not saying automatic, but I like the way this team is constructed. The pick I hated the most was Justin Forsett. I just don't, I don't know with Justin Forsett anymore. I'm just not a big fan. Justin Forsett had his breakout season with Gary Kubiak, and now it's Mark Trestman. Mark Trestman had no choice but to feed this guy last season, and while he was healthy the first half of the season, it was not looking good. Then you thought, oh, maybe Justin Forsett's back, and he gets hurt. That opened the door for a guy like Buck Allen. They drafted Kenneth Dixon, and now, I don't know why, but Terrence West is apparently in the mix now, so I just don't like Justin Forsett. I know with zero RB you have to look for a running back, but there's probably other picks that I would have gone other than Justin Forsett. Especially, it was kind of early, to be honest. Were there any reaches? Not at all with this team. I think he played the safest zero RB that you could. Late round flyer, DeAndre Washington is a guy I really like this season. I think Latavius Murray had a good year because he stayed healthy. If he goes down, DeAndre Washington is looking like he is going to have a really big year. Also, DeAndre Washington probably is going to lock down a third down job as well as a return man somewhere within the kicks or punts for the Oakland Raiders. DeAndre Washington could be a very sneaky play if all goes well. Is this team secure? I say absolutely. I think he's got a perfect mixture of late round flyers with the receivers with Tyler Boyd, Ted Ginn, and he drafted 3 right off the bat. He's got the cuff situation with the running backs, and the best thing you can do when you have two running backs cuffed, just stash guys on your bench that could be potential starters. And I believe he did that with DeAndre Washington. And you never know with Zeke Elliott, just in case he goes down with Alfred Morris. So am I buying this team? Absolutely. I think this team is warranted a threat in his division. I am 100% buying this team. We're going to go right into David Sutton. Now, obviously, this podcast is going to take a little longer, but I like to go in depth and give my full, trustworthy analysis. If you think I'm trustworthy, I don't know. So, David Sutton, and the one overall thought with this, classic Dave. There's nothing else to write here about than classic Dave. Going 3 RBs and then going with the deep threats or number 2 wideouts that have floor or upside potential. It's just, for whatever reason, even in the year of the wide receivers getting taken, it just flat out works. So, classic Dave. Value pick, Andrew Luck in the 8th round. Love it. There's nothing wrong with this at all. Luck, I expect to finish as the number 1 quarterback this fantasy season. And with the 3 RB David strategy that he usually goes, having the number 1 quarterback really, 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 really looks nice with this team. I'm all on board. I'm on board with all the Colts wide receiving options and the passing game. So Andrew Luck, you gotta love. Okay, so my favorite pick from David would have to be. Now I'm thinking about it because for some reason I don't have anything written down here, but obviously there's a lot of picks that I like. Maybe that's why. It probably would have to be LaShawn McCoy. I think if we talked 2 months ago, I think McCoy was kind of on the hot seat. You didn't know what to expect because of Carlos Williams, but he's gone now, and the backups behind LaShawn McCoy, there are no goal line potential backs. You have Reggie Bush, Mike Gillislee, maybe Jonathan Williams, but I think this rookie is going to have to get used to the system a little bit. LaShawn McCoy, a David personal friend, I guess, or to his fantasy team, always seems to wind up with LaShawn McCoy. This is a great pick. I love it. Pick I hated was honestly Jonathan Stewart in the 6th. I think he was just looking for value at this point, but I'm not huge on Jonathan Stewart. And I think the way that he had constructed his team, you already had 3 running backs, and you had Eric Decker, Michael Floyd, and Larry Fitzgerald. I probably would have taken an upside wideout if there was any available. Maybe, I know it's a little bit of a reach, but maybe Sterling Shepard. I know he's a rookie, but I think there was no need to take Jonathan Stewart when you already had 3 running backs. Late round flyer pick, Torrey Smith. I, for one, hate Torrey Smith, and I know in a Chip Kelly offense you're going to get a lot of targets, but Torrey Smith to me flat out sucks. Like, I think he's fucking awful. Like, I don't care if he gets 10 targets a game, 15 targets a game, he might catch 2 of them. He just can't get open like he used to in Baltimore, and then people figured him out in Baltimore, and that's why he's not on the Baltimore Ravens anymore. So, you never know. The upside is there. I just don't see it happening. Is this team secure? Well, let's take a look. You have Ezekiel Elliott not handcuffed. LaShawn McCoy is handcuffed. Latavius Murray is not handcuffed. You have both Cardinals receivers. And Jonathan Stewart, if he goes down, Cameron Sardis-Payne. I think that this team is half and half. I think there's a lot of risk involved with Zeke not being handcuffed, but he has a lot of other running backs. And LaShawn McCoy, who I expect to be an RB1 this season, is handcuffed. So I would say it's half and half. Am I buying this team? Absolutely. There's nothing that would tell me otherwise that I wouldn't buy this team. Eric Decker is a nice floor to work with your RB strategy, as well as Michael Floyd and Larry Fitzgerald. The thing with the Cardinals wideouts, I didn't want to, or anybody else, you don't want to predict which one it's going to be because they all have that potential, and who knows, they, both could work out, but you don't know. He's got 2 of them. I figured if somebody was going to take the Cardinals wideouts, one person would probably have 2 on their roster. David didn't surprise there. The next team, Max's team, picking at the 5 spot, going with Todd Gurley. The theme about this team is the rejected. Well, what do I mean about the rejected? It just seemed like A lot of picks fell to him, but there are a lot of picks that have a lot of question marks and that nobody wants. What do I mean by that? Jordy Nelson in the second, Mark Ingram in the third, Kelvin Benjamin in the fourth, Matt Forte in the fifth, and then you had Jordan Matthews in the seventh. Those are a lot of picks that I think fell to Max because nobody wanted to touch him with a 10-foot pole. And I'm going to break that down a little bit. When you look at the way how Max's team is constructed, it's pretty much value picks. I think that's what happened with this team. So the first value pick would be Matt Forte in the fifth round. This is a guy who's always warranted first or second round. He drops all the way to the fifth. Now, me personally, I am not big on Matt Forte, but if you are confident in Matt Forte, having him in the fifth round, that's a good value. My favorite pick, only because it was a value pick, and I don't think he's that great of a player, and I don't think he'll have an amazing season, but my favorite pick was honestly Jordan Matthews in the seventh. Now, hear me out on this one. I'm not saying this is because of a value-based perspective. I don't think Jordan Matthews is a guy that is going to be, this elite talent. But the fact of the matter is, he got him in the seventh round, where a guy who's projected to lead the team in receiving, receptions, and garbage time like he did last season, and he's warranted him as his number 4 wide receiver. In this seventh round, with a guy who has PPR potential, and a lot of other sites have him going in the fifth round, and he gets him 2 rounds later. That you can't ignore the fact that he still has potential. So getting him in the seventh rather than the fifth, that's probably my favorite pick by him. The pick I hated the most was Kelvin Benjamin, to be quite honest. I had him his rookie season, but the fact was Cam Newton had one of his great seasons without Kelvin Benjamin. I think Kelvin Benjamin is a good red zone target. I just don't see the 10 plus targets a game like he did his rookie season. I think you see somewhere within the 5 to 7 at average range. I don't know what to expect from Kelvin Benjamin, to be quite honest with you. I really don't. Late round flyer, Jay Ajayi. In case Aaron Foster goes down, Jay Ajayi is inserted in there. I don't like Jay Ajayi, but in the 8th round, it's a late round flyer. He also, for some reason, has Darrell Green Beckham. Yeah, there's still upside, but this guy could just be out of the league soon. Who knows? Is this team secure? I do not think this team is secure. Todd Gurley is secure with Benny Cunningham, but I think this is one of those teams. The reason why I don't like balanced teams as much anymore, and this is just a personal preference, to be honest. If an injury goes down to a balanced team, you have to make sure that somebody on the bench is having a good season or is already starting. I don't see that with Josh Doxson yet. I don't see that with Paul Perkins. I don't see that with Pierre Garçon. This is a very if one injury goes down to the position, there's probably going to be a lot of trade talks. The reach pick, Sterling Shepard, but obviously being a Giants fan, 6th round, not that big of a reach, but you're expecting him to be the PPR guy on the team. So buy or sell, I would have to kind of sell with this team. I don't know if I'm 100% buying into this team at all. And it's mainly because I'm going to talk about people who drafted Packers. He has Jordy Nelson. If he stays healthy, Jordy is Jordy. I don't expect him to be healthy because when he was warming up, I believe in training camp, he said he heard a pop in his other knee. I'm scared to death with Jordy Nelson. Jordy Nelson I had ranked as my number 17 wideout. It's just the injury really scares me. Kelvin Benjamin also coming off an injury. Matt Forte is going to lose a third down job and possibly goal line to Bilal Powell. Mark Ingram, you never know with Mark Ingram. It's just a scary situation, to be honest. But I hate pulling the injury card, but there are a lot of injury risks with this team. I know it's kind of a cop out. If they all stay healthy, by all means, this could work out. But I don't know. I think there a lot needs to happen for this team because he's got so many of those guys. Next up, our current champion. Thing I have to say about this team. You alright, champ? Okay, so we're going to get started with Mr. Matt Morris, our defending champion. The value pick. has to be Frank Gore at an all-time high with the eighth round. Gore was the second pick. Wow, second rounder last season. And bear with me, as I'm talking here, I gotta go through these really quickly at this point. Frank Gore, they want to limit him, and I don't think they can limit him because there is nobody in the backfield in training camp or in the preseason that looks like they can split with Frank Gore. I really feel bad for this dude. It's just like he could get 15 carries, but they'll go for like 60 yards or something like that, and you're banking on a touchdown for him to have some type of relevance. But, Gore in the eighth round, why not? Favorite pick, Brandon Marshall. This is an amazing pick right here. I'm surprised he was not taken earlier. The fact that Brandon Marshall fell to the mid to late second round is a great value with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Pick I hated. This is a little bit of a cop out situation. I could go with Corey Coleman in the seventh. I think he could have waited a little bit on that one, maybe when another round or two. But now with the recent news with Dion Lewis, that's a fifth round pick that's essentially probably not going to see the field for a while. So because that news just happened today, I would go Dion Lewis. However, if I did this right after the draft, probably Corey Coleman would be the guy I wouldn't like that much. Although I do think Corey Coleman offers a lot of upside. I just think maybe you could have waited, but who knows if this guy pans out. And I'm not saying he's gonna be bad. I just think the seventh was a little bit of a reach, and that brings me to the reach pick of Corey Coleman. Because other than that, there are not a lot of reach picks here. So you never know. Late round flyer, a guy that I'm very big on to a point though. Philip Dorsett. Ninth round, I think that's excellent value for Philip Dorsett. There's a lot of guys, including myself, that probably could have taken him in the eighth round, or he had that kind of potential. I think Dorsett is going to be a deep threat that's going to get a lot more looks than he did last season. I just think the Colts in general are going to have a career year. They're bound to have a big season. Is this team secure? Absolutely not. This situation with AJ Green and Brandon Marshall, that's a great start. Eddie Lacy not being handcuffed is a risk. Dion Lewis is already going down. Chris Ivory is not handcuffed. Frank Gore is Frank Gore. But you do have some flyers with Tevin Coleman and I can't even say Charkandrick West because I think Spencer Ware has clearly become the number two guy. If an injury happens, I hate pulling the injury card, but at the same time, I don't think this team is secure for a worst case scenario at all. So am I buying or selling this team, champ? I gotta say, man, I am selling. I am not buying into this right now. I think the one thing that probably would made me think otherwise is if you waited on a quarterback and got something else in the fourth round rather than going Cam. Cam will still finish as a top five quarterback, no question, but with the way the draft panned out, people waited on quarterbacks, and if you waited, you won. So, sorry there, champ. Who knows, though? Like I said, what I say doesn't necessarily mean magical insert button here. This is what's going to happen in the playoffs. Next up, you already know. Johnny J. Fresh. Overall thoughts, theme, safety first. Now, Jay had said that maybe he wanted to go a little bit hype. I didn't really see it that much with this team, and I'm not saying that was a bad thing, but a classic Jay going the safety route. I don't know how this team is constructed, to be quite honest with you. I think it's 3-3 for now, three wideouts, three running backs. I don't know. I can't wrap my finger around this team. I don't think it's great, but I don't think it's bad either. That's my overall thought. I think it's just in the middle. My overall thoughts with this team, this is a team that probably gets into the playoffs, but I'm not sure they go, into a championship run. That's just my overall thought. Value pick, Julian Edelman. I actually like that pick. I think people are down on him because he got hurt or something, and then the Chris Hogan hype comes out. Happens with the Patriots every year. They're going to stick with the guys that have been there the longest. Don't buy into any bullshit with Julian Edelman. I think he'll be fine, especially as a flex. That warrants great value if you got him at a flex. My favorite pick would have to be apparently his new favorite player in the league, Russell Wilson. Seventh round. Russell Wilson is a guy who's always warranted fifth round consideration and sixth round consideration. You waited around and got him in the seventh. Russell Wilson, we've seen him have 40-point games, and when Seattle is at home, the whole team, it's like they automatically start off with 10 points, and you're just adding on more to that. That's the way I see that. The pick I hated, and it's not necessarily because of him. It's because he has to be reliant on somebody else that you don't have, and that's Jordy Nelson. And the guy that I hate on your team is Randall Cobb. I, for one, am totally scared of Jordy Nelson. He makes everybody on the Packers better. That includes Randall Cobb. That includes even Devontae Adams, if you want to throw that out there. That includes Eddie Lacy and Aaron Rodgers. I don't. Uh, I don't hate Cobb. I just hate that you have to rely on Jordy Nelson. Um, with that pick, I don't know what I would have done. I probably, honestly, with the value that would be there, probably would have gone a running back per se. I don't know if that was in your calling card, but I'm just terrified of Randall Cobb. You could even make the argument for Demarius Thomas over Cobb. Were there any reach picks? I don't think so. I think he, does what he does every year. I think he lets the draft come to him. He does not go out of his way to, go for a guy. Lamar Miller, you could say, was a reach, but in the first round, I mean, if you want to, it's easier to build a team with a running back than it is a wide receiver. That's just traditional drafting. There's nothing wrong with Miller getting the volume that he will. I think he warrants, at worst case scenario, low end one status. A late round flyer, Terrell Pryor. I can't believe any of us are saying this. But hey, you never know. If he keeps catching touchdowns and long bombs, he's going to flat out win a job on Cleveland. So this is what brings this to the security. The running backs, I believe, are secure. It's just interesting that he would go two PPR backs back to back. I think for PPR backs, I think you got to go one with Duke Johnson and Gio Bernard. I think I would have went a different route. I don't know if I would have gone two, but worst case scenario, the running back position is secure with that. Miller is not, but the thing with Lamar Miller, if he goes down by any reason, there's no reason to handcuff him with a Houston back. We've seen Alfred Blue just suck it up. Jonathan Grimes is probably a decent gadget player, but that's it. The wide receivers, if they go down, they are not very secure though, but I think Johnny did a good job of balancing out a decent balanced roster. So am I buying or selling this team? This is one team that I look at. I don't know. I can't put my finger on it. I can't say that I'm selling and I can't say that I'm buying, which means I really hate to pull this card as well, but we're looking at Marvin Lewis part. I don't know if this is 7 or 8, but I think this is a wild card team. It warrants the reason why I say wild card. There's limited upside. I think he did go upside with Mike Evans and Lamar Miller, but the other guys, I think they're very flory and they're very safe. So this is a team that is playing it safe, but you can't ignore the fact that it's not going to be a bad team. So this is one of those teams that I think becomes a wild card team. Next person, wait for it. Whoa, baby! There is no surprise here. That's the theme. No surprise what happened with Mr. Harsh with the Jarvis Landry reach in the second round. Jesus Christ, dude. Oh my God. You gotta love Harsh, man. Harsh is everything that fantasy football needs. You need somebody that is totally out there in the rankings and does his own thing and still stands by whatever he does. God, you gotta love this guy. We'll start off with the way the team is constructed. When everybody said Jarvis Landry, I think everybody said Harsh is gonna have a terrible draft. I think Jarvis Landry isn't terrible, but he's not worth a second round pick. And I'll get into him a little bit more as far as how they're going to be utilizing him. But you know what? He actually didn't have that terrible of a draft. There's actually a lot of things, surprisingly, that jump out at me. First and foremost, the value pick. Danny Woodhead in the sixth is great value. Danny Woodhead was a guy who was a candidate maybe to be reached on in the fourth because of his PPR potential and his RB1 finish last season. I think everybody is fading the RB1 finish in the fourth. And if you waited to the sixth, I think that's great value. And the pick before that was my favorite pick, and Jeremy Langford. The Bears' backfield, we didn't know what to expect. Come in May, Jeremy Langford was ranked as a third pick. Excuse me, third rounder because they liked what they saw last year, and he became the Matt Forte in the receiving game. But then he dropped down a little bit, and he kept dropping. So what does that mean? Nobody wanted him. But then you saw him in the preseason against New England, and he was running inside, outside. He just looked like a better runner. If you look at Langford's numbers last season, a lot of his big games came in the receiving department. But the fact that he's running between the tackles and is clearly the all-around first, second, third down back, he has the goal line work for now. That could change, but I like Langford as an RB2 with Danny Woodhead. The pick I hated was Travis Benjamin. Reason being, he traded out of his way to go get Travis Benjamin. I don't know what to say about that. Travis Benjamin probably, if you follow the San Diego Chargers, I know I certainly do, but the punt return for Travis Benjamin, he's got the return yard duties. He's got a better quarterback throwing to him. I get that, but I don't know if I would go out of my way to trade up for Travis Benjamin. That's probably why I hated it. He was so happy that he got a trade. Then he asks us, "What do I do?" I said, "I thought you had something in mind," and all that for Travis Benjamin. I don't know if I buy it. All right, the reach pick. I think everybody knows that it's no secret. Jarvis Landry. Oh, wow. I just realized something. His value pick also would be Demaryius Thomas just because you can get him in the third, whatever. Anyway, Landry. So with Jarvis Landry, you never know. Yeah, Harsh apparently loved him more than everything else, but I think that was just ridiculous to take Landry in the second. Third, maybe, but it's funny because he said he was going to go Demaryius Thomas, obviously smoke screening at my house. Then what happens? He gets Demaryius Thomas in the third. So you could look at it as Demaryius in the third, or excuse me, second, and Landry in the third. So it's whatever, honestly. And then he got Jeremy Maclin too. Like those aren't a bad setup of wide receivers. To be honest with you, and I actually liked how the team played out after the Landry pick. But oh yeah, getting on to Jarvis Landry, I'll go in depth just a little bit here. Devontae Parker needs a lot to go right for him, and if not, they're just going to keep throwing it to Landry. I know Adam Gase has never utilized a PPR guy or a guy who works underneath, but Ryan Tannehill just has so much trust with Jarvis Landry, and it doesn't matter what play is going to be called. I don't expect Ryan Tannehill to full on, go with the play call. If it's not open, he's very cautious and likes to dump off to a guy like Jarvis Landry. Late round flyer, I'd say Tajay Sharp is your late round flyer. A lot of people are like, "Who the hell is this?" But he's a number one job, and if you can get him in the 12th round, a number one, it doesn't matter who it is, go for it. Same could be said for Josh Gordon. Who knows what can happen there? Is this team secure? I think there's a lot of running backs. Arian Foster is on the bench. David Johnson is not secure, but I like the wide receivers drafted by this team, and I think. Is he prepared for a worst case scenario? I say yes because David Johnson goes down. He still has three other running backs that could finish as RB2s. And I am 100% buying the harsh hype. I'm buying it. I just think he did a really nice job. I think he went out and got three wide receivers that could flirt with wide receiver one numbers. Maybe not Maclin. I think Maclin is a flory wideout too. Or he's game flow dependent. That's how I like to describe Jeremy Maclin. But Jeremy Maclin is also a number one, and he finished with wide receiver two numbers, hit over 1,000 last season. There's no reason for me to believe, other than an injury, that won't happen again. I really like this team. Harsh, I look forward to having matchups with you in my division. I am buying this team. All right, so we're gonna go off to the next team. Overseas, maybe not yet, but Skyping Mr. Lewis Todd. What do I think about this team? I'm half and half. I'm on the fence with this one as well. Starting off with the value pick, Ryan Matthews in the sixth round. I don't think Ryan Matthews has. Oh, check that. He did go in the sixth round last year, but now he's a starting back. You never know what could happen. It's good value for Ryan Matthews in the sixth. Um, fly favorite picks. It would just have to be in the position that he was in. It's a first rounder, but Adrian Peterson and the fact that he has him cuffed with Jerick McKinnon, who is speculated to get PPR status as well. So AP, I just think you did the smartest thing possible. I think he said he was set on two guys to fall to him. They didn't go, and you took probably the safest pick in the draft with Adrian Peterson, who also still warrants great value of where you took him, and you were able to cuff him as well. So that's why I'm saying Adrian Peterson is the guy you want to have. And you didn't go after anything else that you didn't feel confident in. And if you never know what to do, what would Jesus do? Adrian Peterson. Pick I hated with a passion is Tavon Austin. Um, the reason being, Tavon Austin is the hardest guy to predict. You don't know how he's going to score a touchdown, and I think having him as even as a flex, I don't like. Tavon Austin is just, sometimes he's on punt returns, sometimes he's not. You can't predict that. Sometimes he catches a long bomb like he did against Arizona. Sometimes he's scoring on like a fake punt or a reverse or some weird play because that's how the Rams have to score touchdowns if Todd Gurley's not getting them. So because of that, I do not like Tavon Austin. Did Lewis reach? Absolutely not. There were no reaches with this team. Late round flyer, to be quite honest with you, Devontae Adams would have to fit the bill. Now I know I said that the Green Bay Packers, I don't trust a lot of them because they're reliant on Jordy Nelson. So the player that you get, it's out of your control if they do good or do bad. Devontae Adams, though, however, was a 16th round pick who, with Jordy Nelson, put up decent numbers. I'm fully a believer that Devontae Adams, I think they try to do too much with him as a wide receiver one, and he's not Jordy Nelson, and I think he got a little nervous, to be honest with you. I wasn't buying into the Jeff Janis hype only because Jeff Janis, all he did was catch Hail Marys and got pretty lucky with that crap. But Devontae Adams, you know what? He is honestly a prime candidate to bounce back if Jordy Nelson is healthy, and I think you're going to see a different Devontae Adams than you did last season. And warranted, I'm not going out of my way saying he's a wide receiver too. He could be a flex on some days because he is the third option for the Green Bay Packers in the passing game. Is this team secure? That's why I said the theme here is half and half. I think the running back situation is secure with Adrian Peterson being cuffed. The wide receivers, I am not entirely big on. I do like Dez Bryant, but I don't like how the other guys are a guy like Tavon Austin and others. So it bleeds me. Am I buying or selling this team? The reason why I'm saying selling is there's a lot of things that need to go right with this team. Ryan Matthews needs to stay healthy for one. Adrian Peterson and Jerick McKinnon, if you don't have them, if you're using just Jerick McKinnon as a cuff, I think Adrian Peterson needs to have really big games, and McKinnon needs to get a PPR floor type of game. Like I said about Tavon Austin, he needs to actually become a wide receiver and not some backyard football player. But there were a lot of guys that I didn't like either that the hype is kind of drawn down on, such as Sammy Coates, but you never know with that. So I just think a lot needs to happen, and Carlos Hyde, I think with your strategy, really needs to stay healthy because if he does not, I don't know what happens here. So that's why I'm selling. This could all work out in the long run, but I think there's too much that needs to be happening. Okay. Next guy, Mr. Brian Bonney. This was not the Brian of old. I liked my overall thoughts were it looked like the draft was so promising for this kid with the first two picks. Then it kind of got very, very questionable. And we're going to break that down right here. Brian, I think, is a guy that is starting to catch on to the easiest way. I think this season, or in years past, I think from a traditional standpoint of going RB first and then the wide receivers in the mid round stacking, which will automatically work no matter what age we are in. But the thing with Brian that I have to look at is that Brian is a guy who likes to set up a class. Not, I won't even want to say it classic, but it's another traditional format, or like I've done in the past, where it's getting your big name wideouts, one starting running back, and a PPR back. But I don't like the way it wound up setting up because of one particular player. The value pick has to be Blake Bortles in the 10th. This is a guy who's being hyped up everywhere. People are thinking that the 8th round is a reach. The 10th round, when we hit double digits, there is no reach picks at all. Blake Bortles is a value pick. Nothing wrong there. Favorite pick has to be Keenan Allen. This is a guy who is being hyped up. I'm actually amazed that Brian did go Keenan Allen. I knew flat out a little talking before the draft, like a week or two ago, that Harsh had his sights set on Keenan Allen, even though he tried to smoke screen me. Keenan Allen, if Keenan Allen stays healthy, is going to have a career season. He's just an amazing route runner. He gets open on everything. He's almost impossible to guard. I just think Keenan Allen is a great pick, and pairing him up with Allen Robinson, that is a great, great combo. I love the hype in both of them. I'm buying both. The reach pick is a reach I don't agree with, and that's Theo Riddick in the 6th round. Brian's argument was he looked at the amount of targets. Theo Riddick has absolutely no upside, and I think when we're in the 6th round, 4, 5, 6, 7, those are the 4 rounds you want to go upside. Theo Riddick does not have it. I think you could have waited a round. If you really liked him, you could have waited a round earlier. Theo Riddick, to be quite honest with you, he doesn't offer any upside. He's 8 points at best. If he gets a touchdown, multiply that, excuse me, add another 6 points to it, and you have a total of 14 points. Theo Riddick needs to have like 2 touchdown point games to have some upside, and that's just not going to happen. I just think I don't agree with it. The late round flyers, the Texan wide receivers, who knows what's going to happen with them, but he has his sights set on the Texans passing attack. All right, so it brings me to the is this team secure? I think the bench is definitely secure, but it's interesting. I don't know why Thomas Rawls was not cuffed, which is very risky, but he cuffed for some reason Rashad Jennings. But if you wanted to cuff Rashad Jennings, I think you had to go Paul Perkins. Shane Vereen is not a primary back; he's a third down back. I don't know why that was the handcuffing thing, but he did that last year with Doug Martin and Charles Sims. And it actually did pan out. So if that works out, hey, all the power to you. But I'm just kind of confused at a few secure picks. But the one thing he does have secure is the tight end. I don't think I would have gone Delaney Walker in. I think it was the 7th round. I believe so. I don't know if I would have gone him when you already had Jordan Reed. I just would have flat out said risk Jordan Reed if he gets hurt, then pick up a guy off of waivers. I think there were you know, stupid, decisions. Just give me 1 second, really quickly. I don't know what the hell is going on. I think. Wow, this sucks. There apparently was a trade while I'm doing this. We'll get back to this podcast in a minute. So I just looked at the trade. It's fucking retarded. Flat out. There's something we're gonna have to discuss. I don't know how much of a Redskin homer you can be, Allen, and I'll get to your team in a minute, but I'm still gonna do this podcast as how the teams were drafted, not stupid trades like that. That's probably gonna get vetoed. I don't understand why you would trade a number one back and a guy who has potential to be a wide receiver for two Redskins. There's no explanation to it. That's stupid as fuck. So anyway, back to Brian. Buying this team, yes, if it's healthy, but that's a big, big if. Moving on. We got Paul, Mr. Paul Pacall. Godfather in the NFL. Ball, just pretty much drafted for value. Gronk and Hopkins were great value picks. My favorite pick, C.J. Anderson. I kind of like that in the third round. I think he bounces back with a vengeance this season. No reaches, late round flyer, Chris Johnson. Security. Number two wide receiver is not secure. I think that's open up for grabs. You never know what's going to happen. The running back, number two wide receiver. The running backs are secure though. Coming off of the David coaching tree, going to running back heavy. Uh, Honestly though, the way this team is set up, and he has D'Angelo Williams, you never know what could happen there. I'd say I buy Paul. Paul, I'm really sorry, but this trade just happened, and I'm probably gonna have to veto. I would love to give a more in-depth analysis with your team, but I'm sorry, my friend, because I gotta get rid of this guy right here. Oh my god. Even with or without the trade, this is just this is just a scary fucking team. And when I mean scary, not like as a threat, but like I don't know what you were thinking. You didn't handcuff. Obviously, I'm talking about Allen. You didn't handcuff the two running backs. The value pick was Amir Abdullah. But I'm sorry, I can't even talk about saying what the hell were you thinking about this Redskins trade, dude. Like, come on, bro. Like, that's just so retarded. Like I know Brian wouldn't have a problem if it got vetoed because it's just fucking retarded. There's no way in hell that trade goes through because there's no value. Like you're giving even Marcus Wheaton has some type of upside in this deal. Flyers Moncrief. Or excuse me, that's my favorite pick, Moncrief, but I don't even know what he expects from Moncrief. The reaches, Moncrief, Golden Tate, Kirk Cousins. I think Golden Tate early third was a very bad reach because his value is somewhat slipping. Although he could kind of be a decent PPR option, but Kirk Cousins also in the eighth was, or whatever round it was, no. Dante Moncrief is the only reach I do agree with because I think he could be a very, very good wide receiver too. A late round flyer, I would say Jimmy Graham and Devontae Booker. If Anderson goes down, Booker could be a really decent option. Is this team secure? Absolutely not, and it even got worse with this trade that's going to get vetoed. Am I buying this team? No, no, and no. I liked Amir Abdullah as a value pick, but I don't think he can fill in for Le'Veon Bell for the first three games. If one of these running backs goes down, again, the injury card is being played here, but you have to because these are the top two running backs that are a must need handcuffed position, and you didn't do that at all. And that's, I think, why you want to get rid of Jamal Charles because you're afraid he's going to get hurt. Um, but you're going to have him back on your team because this trade is not going through. Sorry, Alan. But yeah, guys, once again, this is the draft recap. I just want to say thank you very much for tuning in and listening, taking the time out of your Sunday night. Thank you.